So what do you think? Should people call the police if they see a parent smacking a child? Send me your thoughts to dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me at GBNews. While you're there, go vote in our poll because I'll be revealing the results very shortly. But to debate this now, I'm joined by entrepreneur and author Rebecca Jane, who thinks the Welsh Government has gone too far, and the writer and broadcaster Anna May Mangan, who can't understand why you wouldn't report a parent smacking a child. Good evening to you both. Rebecca Jane, you think this has gone too far. Is that because you've smacked your own kids and you think that it is part of disciplining and raising good young people?
Yes, absolutely, Dan. I think that this is once again more snowflakey, woke behaviour and people just needing to have a reason to have outrage about something. There's a very big difference in smacking your child for disciplinary purposes and abusing your child. Nobody's going to stand by anybody that abuses a child, but I was smacked as a child probably no more than a handful of times, and I can say the same for my children. I grew up okay. My children have grown up actually pretty well, and I'm very proud of them. So wholeheartedly, I don't agree with what the Welsh Government are now saying, and I'm just very glad that I'm English.
So, Anna May, if you were in a supermarket, for example, and you saw an otherwise respectable-looking parent give their young child, maybe a 4-year-old, a little slap on the hand, like we just saw in that advertisement, you'd call the police.
Well, I hope I wouldn't need to, because this new legislation should let parents know that it's just not acceptable. And I do think parents should be criminalised for smacking their children. And who defines what a smack is? A tap on the hand. I mean, really, if you're close enough to give a child a smack on the hand, then you're close enough to talk to them. You're close enough to move them away. You're close enough to do something else. And I just love Rebecca Jane's argument that it didn't do me much harm. Well, it obviously did do you harm, because you're inflicting harm on your children because it was inflicted on you.
Rebecca Jane, do you want to respond to that?
I would advise you to keep your opinion about my upbringing to yourself. Because I don't personally... Hang on a second. I don't personally believe that I've been harmed. I'm actually pretty well, and I'm okay with how I turned out. I'm not inflicting harm on my children either. They're in the next room watching this. Yeah. They know wholeheartedly what we're discussing. You just got shirty with me for mentioning your upbringing. If you were sat next to me on this sofa and I was to give you a slap for saying that to me, how would you feel about that? Are you my parent? Don't look like it.
No, but you're encouraging this culture of dealing with conflict and naughtiness by slapping somebody.
No. I am actually dealing with children's behaviour with reasonable boundaries.
Well, that's where we disagree. It's entirely unreasonable to bear down.
Anna May, do you have children?
I've got 4 children.
And you've never smacked them? You've never given them a little tap on the hand?
It would be like someone who is 12 foot tall coming in here and giving me a smack. Instead of, what does a smack explain to a child? Absolutely nothing.
And were you smacked growing up, Anna May?
No. Other than what you teach your children by smacking them is that you can't cope.
So, Rebecca Jane, when you smack your children, you can't cope.
Oh, I know, right? No, I'm not going to agree with you, because my children have actually come out really well, as have I. And I understand the difference in boundaries. And unfortunately, today we see so many spoilt little bratty children who don't understand, because they have parents like you who go, no, then, darling, it wasn't okay to do this and to do that. It's not about constantly beating your child or constantly smacking your child. I have a nearly 16-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. In both of their lifetimes, the 9-year-old has probably been smacked twice, but she knows not to push me, because she knows that that is something that I could do if I was forced into it. But also, you talk about this whole reasonableness wholeheartedly. Yes, absolutely. It has to be reasonable, because then when you go too far, it's abuse, and nobody's talking about that. But that just doesn't seem to be entering the realm of your thought process.
Well, three children a year, 3 children a month die from parental abuse, and so it starts somewhere. Abuse. It starts somewhere. And let me ask you one more thing. If I was in a supermarket and your child was misbehaving next to me, would it be okay for me to smack your child, or is it just a privilege because you love them so much you're allowed to slap them?
You are absolutely correct. Yes, I do love my children. You got very personal with this, don't you?
Well, it is. I think it's really, because I think I'm protecting all children. What we're talking about here is a move from like when we used to send children up chimneys. That had to stop. And there's a culture change. And this new law is actually encouraging that. And also, I'm embarrassed for you that you go on television and talk about being willing to slap your children.
You can be wholeheartedly embarrassed for me. That's absolutely fine by you. I'm not. I'm going to stand entirely by it because I don't have spoilt, bratty children, and you won't be in a supermarket.
You might have. I've never met them.
No, it's not objective. I know my children. Don't even try and go there.
Well, you do know. You're honestly, very up close and personal with them, aren't you?
Brutally honest with you, this attitude that you have is everything that we don't want in our children today. This entitled, spoilt behaviour, and that you're just attacking somebody personally in the way that they bring their children up.
You're saying it's okay to smack children, and I'm taking the other view that it isn't. What's wrong with that?
And what about this idea of dobbing people in, though, Anna May? I want to tap into that because, to me, I think, as Rebecca says, that really encourages a sort of woke society where we're all policing each other.
No, not where children are concerned. I mean, you have children because you love them and your first job is to protect them. And as a society, I think sometimes we have to protect other people's children as well. And as we know, social services are under terrible pressure.
You are the last person I would want to protect my children.
Well, I'm not smacking them, you are.
No, well, yes, twice in the youngest lifetime, yes. And like I've said to you,
how about never? How about taking never?
You may have your children behaving badly in a supermarket. I won't.
No,
it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen with either of them.
I'm not claiming to have perfect. My children are grown up now, and I've got grandchildren. I'm not claiming they're perfect. No child is. But I'm saying there are a lot better strategies than bending down and giving them a whack.
In your opinion, and also whack again is not reasonable.
Well, if you're enraged enough and out of control enough,
but do you not think that this policy approach risks trivialising genuine abuse? Because what my worry is, we have a police force already overwhelmed, right? And they're going to get people calling them up because they've seen a stressed parent give their child a little slap on the hand in the supermarket. That's something they have to investigate. I just worry that we end up undermining the genuine abuse of children in this country, which is something that actually the police need a laser focus on.
But there is no acceptable level of smacking, in my opinion. And I think that by introducing the police, it won't... I've heard the argument as well, the police haven't got the resources or the money, what's it going to cost? But it won't cost much. I mean, because I think people will soon learn not to do it. It will bring about a massive change for the better.
Because we're all policing each other in society.
Because we know that it's wrong, and we know that people aren't coming on TV and saying they're willing to smack their child. It won't be acceptable anymore for that to happen.
Final word to you, Rebecca J.
I just completely disagree with you. I think the only thing unacceptable is your woke and snowflake behaviour, and that is wholeheartedly something I'm never going to stand by in my life. I don't want children to grow up like you. I'm sorry. I want my children to grow up with boundaries, understanding other people's boundaries, and actually being pretty well disciplined.
Yeah,
and that is what I've brought up, and I just don't want them to have your attitude.
No,
okay.
Unfortunately, they'll have yours, which is the biggest problem for continuing this problem.